Hey there, I'm Jessica Lauren Walton, and this is my interview corner. If there's a cool story in the security field or just something that I think is going to be helpful for my fellow professionals, then I want to talk about it. To learn more about the work that I do as a writer, you can go ahead and check out my blog at jessicawaltonwriter.com. Okay, so today's guest is Chad Bruckner. He is a U.S. Army veteran who served combat missions in Iraq. He then served 13 years in law enforcement, including as a detective and undercover officer. Today, Chad runs training programs on mental wellness and leadership focused on the veteran and first responder communities. Alrighty, so I'm excited to talk to Chad today because something we have in common, aside from our passion for mental health in our industry, is that we are both religious people. He's a religious Christian. I'm a religious Jew. And so we're going to talk today about the role of faith in the security field. We're going to talk about the role of faith in creating value systems that help guide us, especially in morally ambiguous situations in our field. And we're going to talk about faith in the healing process, which I think even if you are not a religious person, you're going to learn some really valuable insights from what Chad has to say. So I'm excited. Let's get in there and start talking to Chad. Hey, Chad.
Hey Jessica, how are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad that we're finally talking face to face. This is awesome
It is cool. It is cool.
because yeah, as you were definitely mutually following each other on LinkedIn for a bit before I reached out. And you're a combat veteran, a retired police officer. You talk about mental health, leadership, and your religious faith as a Christian. So these are all topics that I love. And since I couldn't pick just one topic to discuss with you, we're going to hit on all three today.
Ooh,
And look,
let's do
yeah, and I have your book. I have your book.
it. Look at
and I and
that.
I
Look at all those tabs. It's amazing.
and I
Yeah.
told you, yeah, take it as a compliment that it has a lot of tags because it means that I'm like inspired by things that I want to like cannibalize and use for later. But I was so excited to receive it in the mail, so thank you for that.
Oh, that's
And I think it's fair to say that your book covers all three topics. And I've had so many conversations like you have about mental health and psychology in the security field. But something that I've never really talked about with anyone was the religious faith aspect. And I think there's a lot of value there, even if you're not a religious person. But I said, well, this is cool. Like, Chad's a religious Christian, I'm a religious Jew. And for sure, that impacts, the way we see the world. It impacts how we've healed, from difficult situations. And I just think, people could really benefit from that in our field, whether you're religious or not. So I'm just really excited that we're doing this.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think faith is so important. I don't understand for some of us how we navigate problems or chaos without faith or values or some beacon because it can get. I mean, it can get crazy. It can get loud. It can get
Yeah.
noisy. It can get like, who am I? Where am I at? What's going on? And without those beacons to fall back on or lean on, because we're just humans, right? We're just flawed pieces of flesh that 100 years from now nobody will know your name, nobody will know my name. It's just like, so how do we sit in this existence today and like make the most out of it, and also see
Mhm.
ourselves and not take ourselves so seriously, but also realize that we have the ability to do a lot more than we're doing now. And I think having faith is like for me has been the most predominant source of resilience for me in my life has been over the last few years
Yeah.
been my faith. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And, it's interesting. In Judaism, we actually have like two levels of the soul primarily. We have the nefesh and the neshama. So the nefesh is like the animal soul. It's very instinctual, right? And then there's the more elevated soul of the neshama, right? That's more like connected to God. But like this is my theory. I'm not quoting a rabbi here, but I have this theory that, people who are attracted to very intense work in the security field, I think they have a very strong animal soul, right? And that could go
Mhm.
either way. That could be used for, evil, but it could be used for good. And I think you have to have that intensity, that animal intensity in order to do some of the work that you've done, for example, as a combat, soldier, as a police officer, but to use it for good. And I think that there's also that potential for a really elevated soul level on the level of nishama for people who work in this field. So that's like what I want to speak to is, elevating
Yeah,
the entirety of the personality of people who work in this field, if that
that's
makes
pretty
sense.
neat. I haven't heard that before. So I grew up. That's really neat. Actually, I want to talk to my dad about that. I grew up in a house where my dad is Jewish, my mother is Christian. I
Oh,
grew up with
cool.
both influences.
Yeah.
So I had this like eclectic childhood of just celebrating both holidays with
Yeah.
both sides of the family. It was
Oh, you got
amazing.
a lot of gifts. All those gifts,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. The gifts was cool for sure. I mean, that was cool. But just to see like everyone's, like you said earlier, everyone has a different perspective
Yeah.
of things. So when
Yeah.
you see families, even families that have different perspectives, and you're in that family, it's like, whoa, who's right, who's wrong? Well, no one's right or wrong. It's just, it's what they think, it's what they feel based on the values and the teachings that they grew up with. And if we can just stop there and like celebrate each other for why we think and feel the way we think and feel, bam, we can get to a place of understanding. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's cool what you said about the animal soul and the elevated soul,
Mhm.
because this work, you're right. Like, to be a great police officer, you could be, anybody can be a police officer. Anybody
Mhm.
can raise their hand, take an oath, pass a physical test, assuming you're in good shape and do that. Um, can do that, just like in the military. But the ones that care, the ones that care at a high level, the people that I've served with and just had been influenced by, um, there is this animalistic spirit in you. You have to be good at. You have to have
Yeah.
this intensity, and it's crazy. Like we almost don't want to talk about it because it's not. I don't know. It's not couth or it's
It's uncomfortable. It's
yeah, it's
uncomfortable to
uncomfortable.
admit that you have this like violent side, but the reality is there are certain entities in this world that are evil that can only be stopped by force. I wish it wasn't that way, right? We
Yeah,
wish the
so
world
true.
wasn't that way, but it is. And so there have to be
Mhm.
people who are willing to commit acts of force to protect their communities. And that is an uncomfortable topic, but I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's it's great. I mean, I never actually have talked about this topic at all to anybody. I mean, even in all my 21 years of government service, it's still I've never had a
Really?
conversation. Yeah, where you sit there and talk about, at least that I felt comfortable in this setting. I'm sure it's talked about, but I never felt comfortable in my sphere of influence, sitting around and just kind of admitting like we have to be a little animalistic. We have to not become the monsters that we're trying to save people from, but we have
Yeah.
to almost understand why they are the monsters and almost mimic them, not be them and not become them, but understand that so we can stop them, so you can defeat them. You can't
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you can't defeat evil. True evil, it requires violence. It requires fighting. It's funny that we don't talk about that, but it's just what it is. I mean, we discharge our weapons in combat. We say and do kind of mean spirited things in the heat of the moment to get through that encounter. Yeah, I mean that's what it
Yeah.
takes. And then that reflection, that after action, that which is so important. I think the period of where you really talk and dig in deep to what happened, why did it happen, and what can we
Yeah.
do to either prevent it or make it better next time. I think those are so important. When we don't do those, and I've been in organizations where we don't do those, and I've been where we do, night and day. You have to do them because that's where like that goalpost keeps moving back, and that's where the monsters start to come out. When we don't talk about the monsters, we don't talk about it's us versus them. Of course, we're the good guys; they're the bad guys. Well, hold on, we have to stop and still talk
Yeah.
about that. I know you're the good guy, and so am I. That doesn't mean you're not prone to do bad things. And this is where, as human beings, we just have to, and we see this in the world, like all over the world right now, in this crazy world we live in. Believing you're doing the right thing and doing the right thing are two different things in this world. So I think we live in social media where a lot of people want to say they're doing the right thing, but are we? Are we really, when nobody's watching, when integrity matters, are we doing
Yeah.
the right thing? It's an interesting topic to talk about.
Oh, I love this. I haven't even gotten to my first question yet, and we're just already like, I knew this would happen. We just start like talking and having a great time. But yeah, I mean, yeah, look, and I think that creates a certain vulnerability in these people because sometimes there is a fine line, right,
Mm-hmm.
between fighting a monster and becoming a monster, and you have to guard yourself against it. You have to have the tools and the awareness to guard yourself against that, right? So that starts with just talking about it, and And moral injury is something that I know you spoke about in your book, a topic that I'm also really interested in. I think it's directly connected to this soul level stuff. Like at the end of the day, people who are evil don't have moral injury. They don't struggle with, did I do something right or wrong? I think just having that struggle shows you're a good person, and that even if you did something wrong in the moment, right? And sometimes, as you
Hmm.
know, as a veteran and police officer, sometimes you have only a few seconds to react to something, but you don't want to go home and feel like I'm a bad person. You want to
Right.
be able to connect that animal soul to your higher soul at all times, and make sure that's like keeping your moral compass straight.
Comes down to the quality of the person. It comes down to, are you
Yep.
somebody that executes what you say you're going to do? Are you somebody that is generally an honest person and you're accountable when you make a mistake, or do you say something dishonest? Because we all do that. Those are the character stuff that you really have to dig in on. Once you get that, the left or the right or the politics, that doesn't matter. And I think our societies across this world over the last 20, 30 years have kind of lost that. I believe it's we're fed this information from the top, and then if we don't have anything to challenge or push back, we assume that's true. And now we have to start realizing that it really comes down to the character of somebody's heart, the merit inside their soul.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter their ideology. I mean, I'm sure if they want to hurt somebody really bad or do bad things, but ideology is a small part of it. I think we really have to get back to who is that person? Who is the character behind that mask? Because that really is that's going to be the determiner if somebody's successful. And if they're in a leadership
Yeah.
role, yeah, we got to make sure that character is good, because that's going to affect. If you have, so I think I wrote this in my book, and I'm sorry to keep occupying your time here, because I know you have questions. Um, but if you have, and I always say, I said as a police chief, you have a police chief. If you're a police chief, you have 100 officers in your police department. You're not
Mhm.
leading 100 officers. You're leading 300 to 400, assuming those officers are married, they
Wow.
have kids, and you have to
Yeah.
think that way. If I'm going to take action against this officer, what does this do to his spouse, her spouse? What is that going to do to their kids? And I guarantee, if we ask those questions, we're going to stop and not go as far as we've been going. I guarantee it. But we don't ask those questions because we make a lot of things personal or vindictive. And if we just stopped and said, how is this going to affect their wife, who I don't have an axe against? How is this going to affect their kids, who I don't have an axe against? Well, man, that might be hard. Maybe I don't have to take this action as a leader. Maybe I can just have a conversation. We can get back on the same page. Yeah.
So kudos to the people who do it well, who do it from a good place and from a moral place, like yourself, Chad. Okay, so now I'm going to segue into the question, but it's okay. I'm the one who started the whole like conversation and took us
That's
off
good.
on
That's
a
good.
tangent.
I
Okay,
enjoyed it. I
cool.
enjoyed it.
All right. So, tell me a bit about your background and what led you to the work you do today in the mental wellness and leadership space.
Yeah, so I never thought I'd be here right now, doing mental health, mental wellness, mental health, emotional health, advocacy, um, until I went through my own episode. So
Yeah.
I went in the military at 17, was really, really enjoyed that experience, went in for 8 years, so only going to go in for four. 9/11 happened, Iraq war started, Afghanistan, changed my whole life, so many other Americans and people around the world, not just Americans.
Yeah.
And so I went in at 17 and didn't really know, like a lot of kids, who they are at that age. So when you don't have that robust version of who I am as a person, you kind of become who they want you to be, and that's
Interesting.
important. That's necessary. Military is amazing in building soldiers to do the mission, to do hard missions, and they built me and my brothers. I was in the infantry; it was all male at the time. They built us up to do our mission, and we were great at it. So no ill will about that whatsoever. I was proud to do that mission. But what happened is, then as soon as I got out of the military, I became a cop. Didn't really take any transition time at all. Never decompressed. Never really
Mm.
studied myself, and had a lot of success. A lot of great relationships and things happened. But emotionally, over towards the end of that 21 years of public service, as I was getting ready to turn 40 years old, yeah, my emotional health was not good, and I didn't understand it. Nobody pulled me aside and talked about it. Who does that? Nobody. You have to
Mhm.
advocate for yourself. So, and especially being in a policing culture where like nobody's like, hey man, I see your emotional health's a little low, or I see you're taking this a little harder than you usually would. You want to talk about it? Like nobody says that. So, uh, or it's hard to say that, at least in the area I was in.
Mhm.
So what happened was I fell down. I fell down, Jessica. At the same time, I was dealing with a work event and advocating what I thought was the right thing for the whole of the department. Not realizing when I was advocating for that would I would pay a price for that for sure. So me advocating for some changes in the department. We went through a promotional exam, didn't go, I don't think the way many of us thought it would go. So we started to advocate, speak up, and make change, try to make change, and that there's pushback with that, and I didn't expect that, which is definitely my fault. I was a little naive, thinking that when you push back to do something right, you would be celebrated for, hey, we didn't know this was going on. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. And this gets back to that moral injury of as I started to experience my own emotional health, started to fall down. I had to find a way to pick myself up. I wasn't getting any support inside the agency. It actually was they were kind of targeting me. The one chief, not they, the chief of police was. And so as I started to kind of get my wits about me and realizing where I want to go next, it required a life change. There was no simplistic change for me in my life. I came home and told my wife, I am so sad about my situation in life, about my work life. I don't know how
Mm.
it happened this way, but I'm so sad about it. I want to end my life. I had these feelings and thoughts that I want to end it. And that was like a journey over several months of soon after I went through this work event. But asking those questions, having my wife say, Chad, you should get into therapy. And I got into therapy and really started to talk to a therapist about this. And for 5 years now, I go consistently. And that it changed so much in my life. It's like I can't unknow the things I learned. So towards the end of my policing career, I was getting into therapy at that point. I was healing. I was learning things about
Yeah.
myself, learning how messed up a lot of situations were around me that I didn't see. And I said, I got to leave this place. I think I got to leave the profession, and I got to totally change my life. And it was like the scariest thing in the world. So, luckily I had my wife who's been an amazing rock for this. It wouldn't
I
have been
I was
possible.
about to say, like, thank God, like, that you have such an amazing wife, but also that you opened up to her because I know so many police officers who like they don't want to bring their crap home, They don't want to like upset their spouse and so they suffer in silence, which is like makes everything worse. So yeah, I mean just the power of having one solid relationship in your life is like probably saved your life, honestly.
It did. Yeah, my
Yeah.
wife saved my life. Yeah, you're right. I never
Yeah.
say it like that directly and
Yeah.
bluntly, but you're right. She saved my life. And mm, yeah. Um, so
So it's all connected for you, leadership,
yeah,
mental health, yeah,
yeah.
resilience.
Um, so as I started to really, so here's the one thing, Jessica, I didn't realize. I thought I was really resilient. I thought I was really resilient. I was in the army. I was a combat veteran.
Yeah,
You have to be in those roles. That's what I thought. To admit you're not resilient and have those experiences is almost like a failure. And I didn't want to admit failure.
sure.
So why would I admit I'm not as resilient as I thought? There's nothing wrong with seeing a lot of shit. And then as a cop, like I actually had more PTSD, more post-traumatic stress events and experiences as a cop than I did in combat.
Mm,
And that's not to mitigate, the experiences over in war. It's just
sure.
policing communities is we don't. A lot of cops don't spend enough time talking about this. It's hard in the sense of what you see. You see the worst of people often every day. You see people that got fired from their jobs and they got home and now they're drinking heavily and the wife calls 911 because their husband's violent. You're dealing with that. Nothing happened. You're just dealing with, and for me as an empath, like somebody really
Mm,
compassionate, when you're watching consistently human beings in your community struggle and struggle and struggle, go through problems and deficiencies and heartbreak, yeah, it weighed on me. I'll be honest with you, it weighed on me to the point where
yeah,
I wanted to like I think it's a defense mechanism. You do the basic stuff. You go to a call, you ask somebody else to take the lead. You don't realize you're doing this. There's shame that comes in with that. Why can't I take the lead? Why am I struggling through this event? I can't tell anybody about this. So you just choke it down and you carry this little
yeah.
element of shame. You add a little marble of shame to my shoulder. That's what I did each day, and until that weighed me down, and I had to ask my wife for help. So I think for me, just the trauma of being in my community, and really caring a great deal. One story I tell often is we were buying undercover. It was undercover. My partner and I were buying cocaine from a guy in a bar, and we
Mhm.
buy the cocaine in the bathroom. We arrest him. We've done that before. We go through the process, but as we start to do that, the arrest process, he says, "Well, can you tell my girlfriend? Can you make notification to my girlfriend that I'm going to be in jail?" And I forget the exact details, but something that he
Mhm.
said triggered me of like, what's going on? So like basically we went to his apartment at like midnight. He was already in jail. We dropped him off in prison. He got cash bail from the judge. We knock on his apartment door. His girlfriend is there. The apartment is an absolute mess. Trash everywhere. No food in the house. The baby, it's midnight. The baby's up. 6 months old, naked. She's holding a naked baby. Again, not babies are naked and they go bathroom in their diapers. You got to change them.
Yeah.
I'm not, but just the whole scene was like, they
Yeah.
need support. They need help. It wasn't, a typical scene. So my partner and I left and we went to CVS. We bought all these diapers and food. Like to me, it was just part of the
Well,
game. It was part of the package. Like the case wasn't over until that was completed. At least that's the way I couldn't move on and do the paperwork and type up the criminal complaint. And I could not do it knowing that situation. Like that for me, that trigger of maybe it's an ego thing of like doing our part to solve their little problem in that moment, to give them a little something. And then I felt like I did my job. I could go back. But now I didn't feel like I was doing my job if I didn't serve them. I was taking their dad away from them. I didn't help them. I
mm,
didn't seem to care too much, which I worked with a lot of cops like that. So like, what are we really doing? Are we really serving, or are we kind of serving ourselves in these missions? These missions that we say are for others, but it's like, is it all for others, or is it like a little bit for ourselves, or was it always for our others? And as we did this hard job, we just didn't have the self-care, and slowly over time, which
mm,
happens, I think so many of us, we just pull back and pull back because we have nothing left to give. So that's kind of, I think, what
yeah.
I had nothing left to give at 40 years old. I had 3 kids at home. I am a good dad. I want to be a great dad. And so that was the change I needed to make. I had to leave the profession. I went into entrepreneurship, which is a whole nother, we could do a whole hour podcast on that, because of the challenges there. So, but yeah, it's like all the challenges before, I think, set me up for now. And I'm just learning
Mhm.
to kind of take it a day at a time and
Yeah.
go with the challenges.
I think it's a great insight. Yeah. Like looking back at like challenging situations that caused you a lot of, emotional turmoil or pain, and like seeing what you can learn from it and making it meaningful. And I mean, I think this story with, the guy that you arrested and that you had to arrest. I mean, it's still a morally ambiguous story. I can see how it is internally, not that you did anything wrong. And I don't think what you did, like helping out this family, is ego. I mean, that's empathy. And you weren't required to do that, but you felt like as a human being, an
Mm.
obligation. But yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. All these just morally ambiguous situations that, people in your profession have to deal with. And if you don't talk about it, if you don't filter it in some way, I mean, you can really lose your mind, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. And then we wonder why we burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, I mean, just even if you're not like directly witnessing a scene of violence or abuse, I mean, just coming into contact day after day with evil people. Yeah, I mean, you guys are like a cushion for the rest of society that doesn't have to deal with that crap. And it's like, but it takes its toll. Like it starts to make you feel like, man, are there more bad people than good people in this world? And like, what's the point of it all? Like you could start to feel that way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it's that Nietzsche quote. Whoever fights monsters should do. I'm paraphrasing, but whoever fights monsters
Yeah,
should do all they can to prevent they don't become one, because it is
right.
true. I know
Don't
so
stare
many
into
first.
the abyss. If you be careful, if you stare into the abyss, you could fall into the abyss. I wrote a blog piece last month exactly about that. So I was like, yeah,
Okay,
that,
there
I
it is.
love that quote.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a
There you
great
go.
quote. I heard that in 2015 for the first time, maybe
Yeah.
2014 at a police training, and it just resonated with me.
Yeah.
Probably because internally my vibe knew I was going to need that data later, and to kind of fall back on. Like I'm very intuitive in that regard. So like when I see somebody go through
Yeah.
something, even I could watch you go through something remotely. This is what's crazy is, and it probably caused like weird interactions with people that I know, because they probably, my wife says like, you're a weird guy. You just have to accept you're a weird guy. There's going to be people that think, some people that are always going to think you're just weird, and that's okay. And just surround yourself with people that love that weirdness. So like I can see you, never met you in person. I can follow you on LinkedIn, watch you go through something. This is how crazy I am. This is how crazy I am. People don't know this about me, that if you don't know this, but I do this a lot. So it's like I'm very intuitive and I study people like
Yeah.
crazy to have a good understanding. And then they get surprised when I know so much about them. But it's like,
Okay, I'm
it
gonna
is
go
weird.
hide now. I'm going off camera now.
It's creepy. I know. I know. I just got to show up being honest and being authentic. I think that's probably the best angle for any of us, is just, we all have
Yeah.
flaws and we all have strengths. So if you try to be like somebody else, it's just not going to work. Like show up, be weird, be cringy, be who you are, be unique, and people will rally around that. The right people will, at least, I think.
Yeah, but I like that you have a strong bullshit radar. You're like, okay, is this for real? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So The next question, we're going to talk about shame. You brought up shame already, and I think that's important to talk about too.
Yeah.
So, when sharing your personal story in your book, you've mentioned several times struggling with shame. So, what was the source of this shame? Like, what are the most common forms of shame that you've seen among police officers?
This is a great
And then we
topic
can
because I
all,
think
yeah, and we can also talk about the healthy approach for resolving these feelings, but I don't want to throw too many questions at once. That's a
yeah,
bad habit. So yeah, talk about the source of your own shame, and then let's, talk about what are common sources of shame with police
this is
officers.
interesting because I even in my own family they want to know this question. They ask this question because they want to know like, well, tell me what's going on inside of you. Like what. So if they're asking those questions, I can imagine how like confusing it is. So to people, just
Yeah.
like police officers, never dug into the concept of shame. For me, shame started, and I'll little talk about me, but then I kind of definitely want to talk about how I think it affects others and
Yeah,
my
yeah.
experience. But for me, it was childhood. Started my childhood. I believe I had a lack of nurturing. It wasn't anything intentional. My parents did an amazing job. They had some battles. They had their own battles at that time they were going through. So it just required their focus there. And what I'm learning as a father myself now, how critical it is to nurture our kids. My youngest is 7, and
Mhm.
he requires a lot of effort. He requires a lot of time. And I can
Yeah.
say I don't have it. I can say I have a career. I can say I have things going on. I can say go ask your brother or go ask your sister. But no, he's asking me, and I have to stop and like stop what I'm doing and dig in. My first priority is my son. My first priority is my family. First, I have to remind myself of that. So when I think about my parents and how there were periods of like they had some financial issues and they were just
Mhm.
gritting their teeth, waking up, putting the long hours in. Me and my siblings are just naturally going to kind of be in the background for a short period of time while they do that. As the oldest one of 3, I
Mhm.
just realized I probably needed more nurturing than I had. It's not a victim thing. It's just I think a lot of kids are in this boat. I think a lot of police officers are in this boat where
Hmm.
we weren't really
Interesting.
poured into, we weren't really nurtured that well. So we have this perspective of the world that is great because we want to go help people, and that's why we chose these jobs. Military, police, we want to be helpers. We saw some trauma, we saw some kind of hard times as a kid. Maybe there were some moments of neglect or confusion. So now we have this perspective. We're going to help people. We're going to help people, but we don't have a healthy perspective of ourselves or the world unless we fix ourselves first. So then we bring all those unhealthy perspectives, or even unhealthy, just different perspectives onto the job. And now we assume everyone has the same perspective as us. That's not true. And this is the fundamental difference that I experience, and I think is really important for police officers, any first responder to know. Just because you think and feel it doesn't mean others think and feel it.
Hmm.
That will help your paranoia. That will help your insecurities. That will help the feeling of shame that you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough. Everybody has those same feelings at different points of their life, but it doesn't mean they're happening at the exact same moment it's happening to you. It's important to know that because what I went through, I had a lot of insecurities. So I started to, in my head, started to emotionally process situations in a very unhealthy way. Story I'll say is this, and I never told this story out loud, but I'll tell it. It was January of 2019. I was a police officer. I was a detective. It was before I went through my demotions. Before I went through the promotional exam that I went through a promotional exam in that year that I didn't pass that I thought I would. That would end up being this turned into this work event type of situation that I called out. Me and the rest of the officers called out to administration. This is before that happened. This is why I know that I was already going through my own thing.
Yeah.
And we had and this is going to sound. I'm going to tell the story because it's going to sound a little. It's going to tell the full story of what I was thinking. We had this award ceremony in January 2019 for 2018. This is the award ceremony where the chief gets up and he awards all these awards, and he gives Officer of the Year as the final award, and kind of the big deal. And I was the lead detective. I had the most arrests in 2018. Did that for most of my years. And this is the first year now my new chief is here, who we didn't, I thought we got along really well. But in hindsight, we did not. I thought we had a better relationship than we did. And so there were many cases I worked that year that I thought would be award worthy. I didn't really want it and necessarily want an award or anything like that. But what happened is I watched all the detectives in the unit get multiple awards that night, and I was the only one that didn't get one. And I say that because I really believe in my heart of hearts that was intentional. I really, really believe that. Um, but it doesn't mean that my emotional response to that can't be healthy and mature. So what happens is I drove home that night, didn't say a word to anybody, drove home, called my father, explained the situation to him. He says, yeah, I mean, you might have some merit there. There might be some truth, some validity that given the unique situation, that personal dynamics, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do right now. And I had about a 40-minute drive home. And I remember I cried the entire 40 minutes home. And I got home, sat in my
Wow.
driveway, and really tried to process why I was crying. Why are you crying? What the hell is going on? I didn't know. And I didn't want to share with anybody. And this is where the shame really escalated for me. Why I didn't want to share with anybody. Why would I want to share with anybody when I don't even know what's going on? The last thing I want to do is then put this out into the world and have other people take advantage of this, or it costs my job,
Mm.
or affect me in a certain way. People see me in a certain light. I don't want them to see me in a different light. So I tried to do all of this on my own, Jessica. And that is the fundamental number one rule, if I can recommend to anybody, is you are not able to do it on your own. You can't do it. Police suicide is where it is because all those guys and girls, I believe, think they can do it on their own. They can't.
Mm.
They can't. It can't be done. So you have to reach out to somebody. For me, I had my
Yeah.
wife, but and luckily I was able to do that. Um, but that shame of not understanding the experiences. So in hindsight, I think I know I had a lot of trauma from childhood. I had trauma from the military, trauma from police, all mixed together. I didn't deal
Just
with it. I didn't.
piled up. Yeah.
Yeah, it piled up. I didn't
Yeah.
deal with it, and that was all starting to bubble up and bubble over. So multiple things were happening in my life around that same time. I was going through my own stuff. I had a work event, so it just created this. It was just a chaotic time for me. It was like a very chaotic time, and but shame, I think, is something that we all can work on. We don't have to carry it around. It's not a badge of honor. We all feel it at different times for failures that we make. That we look in the mirror and say, "God, did I do that? Did I hurt that person? Did I make a mistake that bad?" And then we fester on that at times, and that for me that caused a lot of
Yeah.
shame. And I know police officers because I talk to them now. The ones that are willing to talk to me and open up about it, they say like working on their personal shame, the way they view themselves, has been the most important work. Once they view themselves, and I've gone through this myself, so I know this. I love myself. I love myself. I love myself for what I'm good at. I love myself for what I'm bad at. I didn't always feel this way, but when I love myself to this degree, it has changed the way I look at the world. It has changed the way I see people in relationships. So I know so many police officers who I don't talk to anymore. We never had a falling out. I know they don't love themselves. And it's the saddest thing to me. I know if they could just find ways to work on themselves, love themselves, they'll probably pick up that phone and be like, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" Or "Hey, man, what's going on?" But, or when I text them and they don't reply, I just, because there was never an event. It was like, I just think there's this deep shame that's pervasive in like security, military, police, anything
Mm.
that's moderately emotional, anything that's moderately vulnerable. We just shut down. And if we could just learn to not shut down and work on it, it's like, whoa, that's empowering. We build our confidence and then we
Yeah.
can help other people do that. And it's like this wheel that keeps rolling.
Yeah, because I think, look, in the moment, in the heat of the moment, whether that's, on the street or in the battlefield, you do have to turn off certain aspects of emotion and able to function to do your job well. But if you don't know how to turn that back on in your personal life, especially with your spouse, things can snowball, right? So let's say you're closed off from your spouse and then that could lead to a divorce, right? And that's going to make everything worse in your life and then you're drinking and then you're not sleeping well and alcohol affects sleep and sleep affects mental health and yada yada, and it just
Mm-hmm.
just snowballs. So I'm sure a lot of those stories are really familiar to you. And I
Yeah.
just want to say I'm a writer, and so I study story craft. Like, oh boy, you don't want to see the rest of my house with all the piles of books, the story craft books. My husband's like, you need to finish the 5 books you're reading now before you buy the next 20 books.
I know that. I know that. I know what
He's so
that's like.
strict. He's so strict. But anyhow, there's this concept of the shadow side, right? So when you want to develop a well fleshed out character, you have to really know this character inside and out. What are the positive aspects or the noble aspects, right? What are the things that could bite this character in the ass? What are their failings, and then sometimes that line blurs. So right, we it's easy to do that as a writer, but to do that to ourselves and to say, I have a shadow side, and I had to do that with myself, and I think it makes me a better writer, it makes me a better person because like I'm a religious woman, but I can tell you in my 20s I did things that most religious people would be like, holy shit. Like
Yeah,
I've done
yeah.
like a lot of, because I have a very strong animal side too. And so I understand, and that's why I understand people in this field. And I'm like, there's nothing you can't tell me that I would like look down on you for, but and that's why I think it's important for people, like even if you don't feel comfortable talking about shame or a story, that like you feel, you know, confused about, if you don't want to talk to a civilian therapist or you don't want to, share that in an open forum, at least like find people inside, right, that you can trust. And that's been hard for you
Mhm.
because you've been burned before, right? But,
Right, right.
you just really need like, one or two people that you can trust who
Mhm.
understand where you're coming from and aren't going to look down on you no matter what you tell them. And I think it's just important, again, to like, we keep coming back to that aspect of connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. I think love, if you can, if you've been burned and you can find a way to still love people, it's, and I'm going through this journey right now as we speak. I mean, I have forgiven the people that have hurt me. I love them. I know why they do the things they do because they're
Yeah.
in deep pain themselves. And I love people and I want to help people. Doesn't mean I'm not naive to think people won't hurt me at the first moment, like we talked about earlier. And that's where that balance is. That beast. Can you balance the
Mm,
beast and the lover?
yeah.
And I want to be a lover. I'm not a fighter by nature. So how can you be a fighter and incorporate that into your life when you're a natural lover? And that's what I've been
Mm.
doing my whole life. So, and there's a
Interesting.
balancing act.
Yeah.
There's a balancing act with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to be accepting of all sides of you, including the shadow side. And the people who are not aware of the shadow side or just reject it, it still exists and it's
Mhm.
going to catch up with you one day. And
And I think that adds
yeah,
more, and
yeah,
I think that adds shame too, Jessica. I think like that is another element
yeah,
to add shame when you don't understand who you are. You're not embracing or accepting who you are. So it's like you resent and reject parts of yourself. That is deep shame. Instead of
yeah,
saying, no, this is who I am. I have to accept parts of this. Some of it I can change. Some of it is, I don't know that I want to change, but this is who I am. These are the flaws. I know because of this, if I don't change it, this could happen to me in a negative way. I'm aware of that. That self
yeah,
awareness, that deep self awareness is, I think that's really where influence comes from. It's like I love following people that know who they are, and I'll follow them all the time because
mm,
they know who they are. They have values and accountability about them. So I'll follow them knowing that they're probably going to make mistakes sometimes, but they're going to be the first one to turn around and say, hey, this isn't the right path. We should go
yeah,
this way. Okay, no problem. They're not going to say, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. There's trust there. And I think that for people that are self-aware like you and everyone else that I've been meeting in this wellness space that is really kind of next level, like really understanding of who they are as a person and as a human
yeah,
being and what they can do, good and bad. That's really where the influence comes.
yeah. And that place of acceptance. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, oh, now I'm like looking for my notes. I'm like, where did they go? Okay. So so yeah, so now we're going to talk about the religious aspect that we talked about at the beginning. And just before I dive into that question, I just wanted to say, like, as you're talking, I was thinking about, the story of King David and the prophet Nathan, um, where, David sinned and but he was a king, right? And like especially in the ancient world, like who would dare to challenge a king? The king does what he wants, but this prophet came to him and said, you sinned, this is what you did. And he immediately responded, Khatati. He's like, yeah, I sinned. Yeah. And he's considered one of the greatest kings,
Mm.
in the history of Israel because, he was a really powerful person. I mean, he was a warrior, he was a builder. And it was very common in that time to just, strike people down and not have to admit that you did anything wrong. But look, I think sometimes you do something wrong and it's okay to admit it. I think not admitting it makes it more shameful. And then, you don't get a chance to repent for it. And I think repenting is really important.
Yeah, it is. And I never got the whole repenting thing. Like it's
Mm.
funny, like I grew up going to church every week as a kid, but never embracing it, never, it was a task, it was a chore. So I would do things as a kid, tell lies, or any kid does it, but I never felt like I needed to um make amends with God about it. I always felt like I had to make amends with other men about it, other people about it.
Hmm.
And that distinction was huge for me because I started to really put men, and I say men loosely, humans,
Sure.
on this pedestal that they don't deserve to be on. No human deserves to be on a pedestal. I mean, we can have reverence for people and love people and respect them. Oh my God, but
Yeah.
understand that they're a human being. They're flawed. They're going to do things. They're going to make a mistake. They're going to get a traffic ticket. They're going to get sick at a party one time and have to excuse themselves. Like that. They're just human, right? So that's okay. Just understand that about them and not.
Mhm.
But I didn't. I would put people in the highest reverence. I would actually
Mm.
treat people, some people, and this is why I got taken advantage of before in my life. So I learned that when people,
Yeah.
especially the real true narcissists, that can hijack that about me,
Yeah.
and for
It's
anybody,
terrible.
yeah, it's yeah, exactly. And so I had to make the switch in the last couple of years. It's only in the last couple of years, Jessica, that I'm like, wait a second, I am not nearly as faithful as I thought it was. I mean, I believe. Oh God, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, but the way I live my life isn't as authentic as I thought about. So it's funny you say about repenting. It's only the last couple of years that I started praying and asking for forgiveness for myself for things I've done bad. I've never done that in my
Mm.
life. And I think that's really important. I think if you were not,
Yeah.
we all make mistakes. If you're not at that point doing that, it's like that's kind of me, the first barometer of like, okay, where are you at with this journey? Because you got first thing you have to repent. You have to say, I made a lot of mistakes. Here's my mistakes. Here's what I learned. Please walk with me, God. Please show me a better way. Like if we're not
Yeah.
at that point, how faithful are we? And I'm not judging people's faith. I'm just saying from an individual accountability perspective. Repenting, I think, is a big part of faith for me. So I'm glad you brought
Hmm.
that up because that's the only reason I've been doing that.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do a compare and contrast. My next question was going to be like, what role has your religious faith played in your healing process? But I wanted to say, since we're just talking about repentance now, so the word for repentance in Hebrew is teshuvah, and so the root of that is shuv, which means to return. So
Mm.
there is this distinct differentiation in Judaism between an action and a person, right? So you commit an action, and let's say it is the wrong action, right? It was a bad action, but it's not you, it's the action. And so you have the opportunity to shuv, to return to who you really are, to your
Mm.
essential soul through sincere repentance, right? Um, and
Wow.
look, I think if you don't, yeah, see, isn't that great?
Powerful.
um,
Powerful.
yeah, and if you don't, if you refuse to do that, right? Refuse to admit there's a shadow side going on, for example, then those actions you just keep committing them, and they become who you are, right? And you don't want that to happen. So it's easier to just say, like, hey, like I did do something wrong, but I want to return to put myself on the pedestal. I want to return to that place like that is a really good, holy place and have that confidence that you can go back there, you
Yeah.
know?
Can I
So
can
I'm
I ask you a
yeah.
question? Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Uh-oh. Yeah, go.
I am so
Go ahead.
curious about this. And how are you processing everything in the world, like with the anti-Judaism, the anti-Semitic
Oh
stuff?
god, yeah.
Like and I know that's a heavy question, but like just as a
Yeah.
person, just as a human being, a positive spirited human being, a mom, like
Yeah.
how do you weather that in this 2024? This isn't 1940 again. So like
Yeah.
how do you weather some of that stuff?
First of all, I think it's very sensitive of you to ask that. Obviously, it's had a huge impact on me. What happened on October 7th. I am a dual American Israeli citizen, and I worked in the Israeli security field. But even beyond that, as a Jew, we are a small community. We are very connected, and it's been very painful. And yeah, and kind of as you pointed out. The pain that we already suffered from the massacre, from the war, from our ongoing hostage situation, has been really multiplied by the hatred toward us, the disinformation. And look, on LinkedIn, I usually like my brand is mental health, psychology, and things that people can pat me on the back and say, hey, that's great that you're talking about mental health. Look at you. But then I felt immediately an obligation to start speaking up about Israel, right? I think all Jews who have a voice, who are articulate enough and know enough about the conflict, have that obligation. But as a result, I get a lot of hate mail. So yeah, and it's heavy. And I know that it's not hate mail against me personally. It's hate mail against Jews or Israel, and it's coming from a place either of disinformation, or evil. But I know a lot of people who are very open and eager to learn more. And Yeah, so I keep trying to focus on those people. I have days where I'm totally overwhelmed by how much evil there is. Whether that's, journalists, what they do, just lying. And I know because I've been in the country for, most of my adult life has been in Israel. So I'm very yeah, I know when people are lying. It's very painful, but
Mm.
I'm trying to think of a way to articulate that to wrap it up.
No, no,
I have to make a choice every day. What am I going to focus on? Because the reality is there is a shit ton of evil out there. The reality is also that there are a lot of good people out there, and I've had people, for example, from the military contact me behind the scenes and say, "Hey, like I can't talk comment publicly on your post, but I'm going to be leaving the military soon, doing like a fellowship on Capitol Hill. And I do want to understand more about Israel. Could I talk to you for like an hour or so?" And I'm like, that makes it worth it to me because this is a good
wow.
person who says, like, I'm open. I don't know. It's confusing, you know,
Yeah,
Pick-
that's
but
huge. That's
yeah, could
huge.
I talk to
That's
you?
where we're
And
at.
I'm just like, okay, well, that's having a positive impact on another human being. And it's also having a positive impact for my people. And that's what keeps me going. It's like, yeah, you just have to decide every single day, am I going to focus on the good or am I going to focus on the evil?
Mm,
Yeah.
man, that is, like you're a podcast host, you're a mom, you work in the security space, but you're dealing with some of the highest level stuff that some of the worst people are dealing with that are trying to change the system. You're no different in that regard. You're dealing with hate and evil, and calling out things that people that don't understand. And yeah, I just
Hmm.
wanted to ask you that just to learn from you, like how you weather that stuff. It's not easy when people say things about
Yeah.
you. It's not easy at all to deal with that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's not about me. I mean, it's about my people. So it's just like just seeing everybody take a piss on your people, you're like, you know what? I have enough like toughness in me that I could take it. And I have to go out there and say something. So it really is, just an obligation. And then coming back to your tribe and your good people instead of focusing on the evil people out there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I think that has a lot of relevance for cops too, right?
It does, yeah, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Be surround yourself with positive people that can empower you and lift you up and help you overcome the emotional mental health challenge of the day. I think how many police officers right now are sitting in their car driving around with some serious mental and emotional health issues, and they haven't told anybody, and they're just choking it down. It's happening right now as we speak. I know it,
Yeah.
and it's like if we could just share with them, it's going to be okay. Like that's the number one thing I want to remind them. It's going to be okay, and share with somebody. Open up one person. If they get open one person,
Yeah.
that one person could be they might not even be a trained person. They don't have to be, but that could be the one person who cares. Who cares? Tell me about what you're feeling. Why are you feeling? Oh God, I didn't know you're feeling that. And that interaction, that level of care or curiosity, could be what you need. Because when I
Yeah.
went through my point a few years ago, when my depression was so bad at the end of my policing career, it's not real or true, but I thought nobody cared about me. I thought nobody really cared about me that I worked with. And that was part of my shame. I'm going to just leave. You don't care about me, I'm just going to leave. It wasn't real, it wasn't true, but that was some of my pain I had to work
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that aspect of, perception is also important, like the story that you tell yourself,
through.
right?
Yeah.
So
I had
you've had
I
to
had great
learn
relationship with the police department.
adjust
So
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, and I like that in your book. You're really honest about the good and the bad, whether that's about yourself or the department or even just the whole, industry, so to speak, of policing, right? Just being able to have those honest conversations. But yeah, I keep inserting stuff about my religion. I want to hear about your religion. Let's talk about, yeah, the role that religious faith has played in your healing process. And I mean, you can also talk about the Christian view of repentance, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. So growing up the way I did, going to the church every Sunday, but not really feeling close to Christ. I mean, I just never had a close relationship. Then I went
Mhm.
into the military, experienced things in the military that further questioned my belief in religion or just belief like this is a crazy world. This is a crazy world. And I think what happened for me is I started to really dig in it. It's a crazy world. And it's easy to start forgetting that there's a higher power.
Mm.
You're like, I was living in this mode of humanity as a cop and everything for 20 years of just in the mess in the mud. And I forgot there was the power, the entity. We're
Mm.
nothing, you know. We're his children, his people, and he is the answer, and he is the way, and he is the light. And so when I went through my depression issues 5 years ago and really started my mental health journey 4 years ago, really started to get real serious about it. I recognize the fact that I am an insignificant person in this world when I actually thought my ego was pretty big and I thought I was pretty important before. Okay, that was a learning change I got to make. So now I have to redirect that energy that's not about myself anymore. And I have to redirect it somewhere else. And it was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, there's this thing called Jesus Christ, this entity called Jesus that you've known your whole life. Let me read a little bit. So I started reading some passages of the Bible. I was just curious. I started reading. Never read it
Yeah.
before. And I started digging in, and the stories really resonated with me. Started watching YouTube videos and documentaries, and just went down the rabbit hole at 2 in the morning about religion and faith. And there were times I'm
Mm.
crying because I'm challenging my own perceptions and perspectives and things that I thought were true were not true. And it was like, and I get chills not even thinking about it. Of like
Yeah.
this. It was the journey of like getting closer. It was almost like a spaceship with the laser beam coming down and sucking me in, and I'm like coming up into the skies. I mean, but that's what it felt like. It was like, I'm getting closer. I see you. Oh,
Yeah.
I know you. I know you. You know me. Oh, wow. This is a whole different thing. I didn't know about this. Um, so really, Jesus has become like a mentor to me. He's become like my field training officer. I'll never be Jesus, obviously, but his teachings are for me a way to. They're a roadmap, Jessica. They are a roadmap of his eternal kindness, the way he walks through the world. I'll give you this. When I started reading about him washing the feet of strangers,
Mm.
healing the sick, who are we? Who am I as a man to say I'm not going to help somebody when Jesus would wash the feet of strangers? And I know that. So I can pretend I don't know that. I can pretend I didn't read that in the Bible. I can pretend that and then make an excuse in my head why I can't do that. I can do that, but
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. So he's become this amazing mentor to me of like,
Mhm.
of decision making, of decision making. This little boy who was kind of trying to figure out his way in the world at 43 now feels very much like a teenage boy, like I'm learning and growing at a crazy rate. And
Yeah.
so I'm not done learning and growing yet. And it's really Jesus's way. It's like his teachings, his never making excuses, his being this perfect, living this perfect life, and always doing what's right for others is man, it's like it takes my mistakes and my failures and it helps me just push through them because I make mistakes and failures. I'm not
Yeah.
Jesus, I'm a person. I make them every day. But what I when I think of Jesus like that in my mind now, I think of, well, he wants me to say I'm sorry. He wants me to be accountable. He wants me to learn from this so I can continue to grow and help others. Well, then I'm going to say I'm sorry, and I'm going to say I'll fix this. I'm going to say I'm going to get better. I'm going to say I'm going to learn. That's easy for me to say now. When I didn't struggle to say that before because it's not about me. Like you said that earlier, I love that. So Jesus is my mentor. He's my field training officer, my business coach. He
Yeah.
is my father. He is the one I'm following and trying to emulate. And I think if I try to emulate him as best as I can, knowing that I'm going to fall short all the time, I
Mhm.
think at the end of life, my human life, I'll be there at a point where I have given as much to the world as he wanted me to, like as he created me to.
Yeah.
I don't think he created me to sit and play video games. I think he created me to change people's lives in a very positive way. So even if it's one person at a time, I'm fine doing that because that's what Jesus wants. So his mentorship for me is show up every day, work your ass off, be a
Yeah.
good person, own your shit, always put others before yourself, be honest and kind, be virtuous. Like that's my blueprint for life right now. So
Yeah.
and it's because of Jesus. Jesus is. I read the Bible, and I haven't read it all, but I read a lot of it now, and it's just the stories inspire the hell out of me. I mean, they do. And I got into The Chosen. I watched that show now, and the
Hmm.
Bible series. I really got into that. At the same time, I was learning about the Bible. I never watched those spiritual shows. I got into all of that.
Now
I
I'm
started
curious.
watching.
Now I want to see it. Yeah, I'm
Oh, they're
curious.
amazing. I started watching these documentaries.
Huh.
Theologians that are on the ground trying to find artifacts. Like I was like obsessed. I was like, Jesus is a real person. Like he was a real person. Like he was a real
Yeah.
person. By all accounts, like that is you can't really argue that. Like there is evidence that he was real. He was a person that lived. So shit, I have a lot of work to do to keep being a great person, like you.
But I think it's really important that you acknowledge that this is somebody to emulate as opposed to somebody that you have to copy exactly because There's actually a concept in Judaism. This is actually a source of evil inclination that is very tricky. Is people who think everything is black and white. I'm either good or evil. I have to be perfect. So if you were like, oh wow, like I have to be exactly like Jesus and it's not attainable, then you could easily just plummet and say, well, screw it all. If I can't, be like him, then, I have to just reject him completely and go to like, the
Yeah, yeah.
opposite end. And so that's an important concept in Judaism of like that man is holech, man is a goer. It means you're going all the time. You're not standing still. So you're like, yeah, I'm a lifelong learner. I will never stop wanting to learn. And that I think is complementary to saying like, yeah, I can't be like Jesus, but this is someone to emulate. And that's something that I will holech, like I will keep going towards that my entire life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's like, it's weird. It's like a GPS device,
Yeah.
it's taking you there. You might never, I mean, you should get to your destination. Maybe that's a bad example, but like Jesus is like my GPS. It keeps me on track. I know it's impossible to be him.
Yeah.
Um, but every time I'm reminded of something in the world, either good or bad, it's like my intuition just screams. And it's like, okay, there is a lesson to be learned here. Like my brother, he lost his house in a house fire a month ago.
Oh
They
man.
got devastated. They lost everything,
Whoa.
everything possession wise, material wise. But they have all five of them, mom, a dad, and three kids and a dog. And those six living creatures are still here.
Thank
They're
God.
still here and they're living
Yeah.
in a
Wow.
hotel room. They're living in a hotel room. They don't have anything, but that's okay because they're still here. And watching my brother go through this, he's my little brother, 6 years junior. So I've always felt the inclination to want to protect him and help him. And I
Sure.
can't do that here. He's helping me realize how further lessons of this world we live in of getting, accumulating, accumulating, obtaining. It is just the wrong mode of living a life. Nothing wrong with that stuff if you have all the good things in your life, but watching him go through literally six creatures, six living entities. The only thing that matters in his whole world is his kids and his wife and his dog, and he still has it. And he's like, "I'm good, bro." That
Wow.
level of learning I'm learning now is like, okay, we really don't need a lot of this stuff. So it's a lesson
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, what is really important to you, right? Like, what do you prioritize in your life? And I can imagine that is very clear to your brother right now. But yeah, geez, what an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when we talk about religion, there's also, you can't really talk about religion without talking about value systems, right? So in your book, you discuss the importance of officers having a strong value system. What do you believe are the ingredients of a strong value system?
So when I was in the military, they gave me the Army core values, the seven leadership core values:
Mhm.
loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage, leadership, the acronym. And they
Yeah.
give you on a dog tag and you wear it around your collar. I got this at
Oh,
17 years
really?
old. Nobody in my life ever talked to me about values. Nobody
Yeah.
ever talked to me about, maybe my dad used the word morality a few times in my life, but I didn't sit around as a kid and really had these in-depth conversations. The only understanding I knew about values was watching other people have success in the world or failures in the world. Okay,
Mhm.
this is something that's good. How did this become good? Or this one didn't good. Why didn't this go well? This person's crying after this interaction with this person. Why? Or this person's laughing and smiling after this interaction with this person. Why? And asking all these questions and just
But nobody was
observing.
articulating it to
No,
you.
no, nobody's
Yeah,
articulating.
interesting.
When I got this dog tag with had
Uh-huh.
literally, Jessica, this like little
Yeah.
acronym on it that said LDRSHIP because it didn't fit the full acronym, and it was like the most basic education of putting things in a written form. I said,
Yeah.
these are values. Then we're in boot camp. They're talking about values, and the drill sergeants were like, these are the values you lead with when times get hard. And okay, so it was like all hitting me. I had this great upbringing of theory in real time with a
Mhm.
lack of like formal education. But now I'm in the military, and people are saying things that make sense of what I was experiencing in life, and that just created a lot of momentum in me. So the values I think they should be things for us that are non-negotiable. I think they're all different for each of us as individuals.
Mhm.
For me, loyalty is it's an Army Corps value, but I really adopted that as one of my own because that was important for the military to be loyal to the military mission and people. I brought that into my personal life, civilian life. Like that is so important to me. whereas other people might not lean on that loyalty because they didn't
Mhm.
have that military experience, right? So that they're not leaning on loyalty. Maybe they're financially driven or something. But I think those core values for us are so important. They should be things that are non-negotiable that we can't change them. We shouldn't change them.
Yeah.
I'm a flip flopper, so I'm always changing my perspectives and theories on things based on new information I receive. That
Yeah.
I think that's okay, but your values shouldn't flip flop. That's who you are.
Foundational. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
They're
foundational. I mean, that's what you stand for and what your integrity is. So um, I think for anybody having your values identified, write them down. When I teach my leadership training or my coaching courses, I have clients write them down. What are your values? And a lot of times, like, I don't know. We got to figure it out because if you don't know what you stand for, you don't know who you are. It's like your family crest. Like, where are
yeah.
you going? Where's your blueprint? Where's your roadmap? Where do you want to get to with your family? Where do you want to get to as a person? And we're just not encouraged to think that way growing up. I didn't. And it was only until I went in the
No.
military that I was learned to get structured like that. So,
Interesting.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, very interesting. Yeah. So I think values, non-negotiables, things that absolutely
Yeah.
matter, and things that that identify you as a person, your soul. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's good to like, again, I see you as like a really balanced person, which just says a lot of positive things about your mental health, and you're flexible, right? And flexibility is actually, I heard in like a TED talk somewhere, flexibility is also like a hallmark of mental health. But, I think you have this balance where you're just like, yeah, like it's important to be open minded. And when you take in new information, be willing to change your perspective. But at the same time, like, have a foundation of values that you stick to no matter what. And that these are solid, like tested values. I think that's
Yeah. And
important.
I think those are
Yeah.
challenging too, because like in the security space or the police space or military space, there's a lot of alpha personalities there.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people that are willing to die on every hill possible. And it's like, well, it's not possible. You can't die on every hill. So you got to pick your battles. You got to pick which hill you want to die on. But we work with people that want to die on every hill. So as an individual that says, you know what, I'm flexible, I'm malleable, I know who I am, I know what I want. This situation, this person is willing to die on the hill for this. It doesn't matter to me, so I'll let them die on the hill. But what if you're in a situation where they're going to die on a hill that's really not important for the mission, but
Mhm.
that's a hill that now violates your personal values. You're in this situation now where you have
Yeah.
to navigate this. You have to work through this. You might have to say something to the person. You might have to take action that's different than that person is doing. And that's going to cause conflict, even though you're not trying to cause conflict because you're sticking to your
Yeah.
values. That's where it gets messy. And I think if we just be, like you said, balanced, positive, inclusive, and
Yeah.
understanding that how we live our lives is irrelevant to how other people are going to live their lives. So
Yeah.
if we're making decisions on for others so we don't offend them, or please them all the time at the risk of our own values, that's not healthy at all.
And I think that is especially important for leaders, right?
Yeah,
Because I think people naturally want to be liked, and sometimes you have to make decisions as a leader where not everybody is going to like you, even if it's the right decision.
right.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue into the next question. You talk about different types of leaders and different types of power, in your book, like such as influence versus authority. So if you could build the ideal police chief, what would he look like? And how would he run his department? And I just don't want to forget this. So before I do, because I go off on tangents, I want you to read this. You need to get this. I will send you a link.
Yeah,
Lessons in Leadership, a weekly reading of the Jewish Bible by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. So he is the former chief rabbi of the UK, and his work is very accessible to people of all backgrounds. You don't have to be Jewish to read the book, and yeah, and to understand it. And he just every chapter or section of the Bible, he talks about the primary leadership lesson we can take from that section. And something that is really big in Judaism, and something that Rabbi Sachs talks a lot about, is servant leadership, right? And I know that's something like, even if I don't know if you use the term directly, maybe you did in your book, but I know that's
yeah.
something that like is really important to you. And I think that's like a place where I don't think that's just Christian or Jewish. I think that's a real Judeo-Christian value where they meet. So yeah, so let's talk about that. Like,
Yeah.
if you
The
could
crazy
build
thing,
that, yeah,
the crazy
yeah,
thing
go
about
ahead.
servant leadership, Jessica, and it
Yeah,
frustrates me, but I like talking about it. Isn't
sure.
leadership isn't leadership intended to be servant leadership? Like, isn't the practice of leadership, the act of leadership, servant like, right? I mean, it should be.
Mm,
So we say
yeah,
that, like, are you a servant leader or a leader? Well, you should be a servant leader. That's what leadership is. You're serving others. So
But you
you're
also have
serving
to
the mission.
lead. You have to
Yeah.
lead too. That's
And
tough. See, that's the thing with the balance again, right? Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
So we're like,
tough.
oh, I'm in a leadership role. Okay, well, what kind of servant leader are you? Oh, I'm not a servant leader. Well, you're in a leadership role. So it's like you have to be a servant leader. And to not be a servant leader means you're focused on yourself and you focus on what you want. That's not what a servant
Yeah.
leader is. That's not what any leader is. So I just think it's fascinating to talk about. Um, I've been around more leaders that use authority than influence.
Yeah.
And I say those are two big things when we're trying to get people to do things we want them to do. There's authority. There's the I have a title, I have a role, I'm a higher level than you, my salary is higher than you, my seniority is longer than you. I ask you to do something, you have to do it. We all know that in those kind of structured organizations, we don't really have to say it. We
Yeah.
just know like that's the boss. You do what the boss says to do. That's
Right.
called authority. Within that authority, the leader has then on a spectrum. He or she can be flexible, engaging, helpful in that sphere of you're an authoritative role, but you can still be a great leader, effective leader,
Mhm.
absolutely. On the far radical side of that authoritative spectrum is fear, is narcissism,
Mm.
is toxic leadership. And it's on a spectrum. So it's not like you're toxic or you're not toxic. I think it's a spectrum. So
Mm.
when you're an authoritative leader, you're somebody that's often used to telling people what to do and expecting them to do it, and expecting their compliance. And then there's levels of which you navigate that if people don't do it or they don't accomplish things the standards in which you set for them. I believe then you can transition further to influential leader. So, in
Mm.
additional authority, and I believe there can be a hybrid of both, by the way. I think you should have a hybrid at different times depending on the mission. But generally, an influential leader is somebody that understands people. They understand people, that people are the most important part of this process, not policies, not the resources or equipment we have, people.
Yeah.
And because they understand people, they just navigate the situation differently. I navigate the situation differently. I spend so much time with people and ask them questions and pour into them because I realize that if we're going to be successful, it's because of them, not because of me, not because of the
Mhm.
equipment we have, but because of them. So I think the influential leaders understand this, and it's harder to be this way. It takes more training, it takes more humility, it takes more understanding of ourselves.
Maturity. Yeah,
Maturity,
maturity.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Humility to say like, this is not about me, so I can remove myself from the situation.
Hmm.
I have an ego. We all have an ego, but my ego is a very healthy level to understand that right now this person needs my time and attention. It's not about me. Um, and what happens is, in my experience, is when you treat people like that consistently, when you ask them to do hard things, they say, absolutely, I got you. No problem. There's a level of trust and respect and care that they don't want to let you down. They don't want to be that person. They want to be the person that fills that role and fills that gap and be helpful and be part of the team. Because again, they're not trying to
Mm.
please you. They're trying to, they see as the leader cares so much about the mission and about the outcome. And as a leader, if the leader is leading like that influentially and is so focused on the outcomes and not about themselves and healthy outcomes, not the bottom line,
Sure.
everyone in that philosophy will trickle throughout the whole team. Everybody will say, "Oh, if the boss isn't making it about himself and his salary and his time off or her time off, well, just you naturally you create this culture where,
People pick things up. Yeah.
yeah, like when I was a young soldier, 17, 18, I had great sergeants in the army who modeled behavior
Hmm.
for me at a really high level. So I was really lucky to see it. I saw the ones who didn't, but the ones who did, I just stuck by them, and they lived their life off duty like they lived their life on duty. And at 17, 18, I've never been on duty or off duty. I was a kid. Um, that was a huge lesson for me to understand this. No, there's not an on duty version of you and an off duty version. That's where you become inauthentic. You show up and you do the job the right way and you live your life like that off duty. And then when you come back, you live your life and you work. And it's just like this mirror of a one life philosophy, not two lives.
Yeah. And I think they're also, I think you have to know as a leader how to adapt in different contexts, right? And that's something that Rabbi Sachs talks about in one of the chapters of his book. And then he talks about like the importance of knowing context and how to adapt to that. So, I mean, I think there is a time and place to put your foot down and to be that
Mhm.
authority, right? If you have a lot of people disagreeing, but somebody has to
100%.
make a,
Yeah.
yeah, and somebody has to make a decision, even though making that decision means there's going to be some people who try to fight you. But I think you do have to be a little rougher, depending on the context. But maybe you say, hey, that's for certain circumstances, but foundationally speaking, like I want to be the type of leader who influences others, or inspires others to be good leaders themselves, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, the players don't know the whole situation. That's where I think leaders also have to understand is
Hmm.
your teammates don't know what you know. And if you can't tell them what you know because there's legal issues, there's policy reasons,
Mm.
then you have to do a good job of explaining to them why you know something they don't know and how this is affecting your decision making. Because imagine if somebody's making a
Yeah.
decision for me on my behalf and I don't have all the information and I'm not happy with the decision, I'm going to be upset with that person. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but if that leader could explain to me, hey, Chad, I can't give you all the reasons. If you trust me, and I'll say, hopefully I do, there's other stuff going on here at play. I promise, as soon as I
Yeah.
can share that, as soon as I can share that with you, I promise you'll be the first one I do. I'll talk to you about that and I'll share everything with you. Just trust me in the short term. This is what's going to happen. Getting back to your question about the police chief, here it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been saying this all the time.
Go for it.
If we want empathetic police officers and compassionate police officers and smiley police officers and healthy police officers, I can tell you what to do. Pretty simple. Hire a chief that smiles a lot, that is empathetic, that's in good
Mm.
shape, and loves people and cares about the job. I guarantee you give that chief the resources, let that chief do their abilities.
Yeah.
Within 18 months, 24 months, most of the officers there will be happy. Most will be smiling. Retention will shoot way up. You won't have any recruitment issues. Mental health will soar through the roof. People will love their, everything will be, there won't be kumbaya, and not everything will be fine,
Yeah.
but there will
Sure.
be so much more issues to manage. You can actually manage. It won't be chaotic. There's a lot of police departments in this country that literally are in the middle of chaos. So I understand why they can't get out of it. They don't have the right leader to get them out of it, and it's too
Yeah.
chaotic. So we just show up every day and just go through the motions. When
Yeah. But
we
sorry, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, when we bring in great leaders, high quality leaders who can navigate
Hmm.
chaos, it doesn't mitigate problems. It just lets the problems, we can work through those problems better, and
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
manageable and more with less headaches. And I just think we have so many like head beatings against. So the ideal chief would be somebody that is human focused, person focused, people
Yeah.
over policy, is malleable, like you said, is flexible, willing to understand that their officers' needs are more important than their own needs. And if that chief can pour into their officers 100%, like really give into their officers, because the chief's not going on calls, the officers are going on calls. That chief, his or her primary role, and we get into a visionary thing is which I think a lot of chiefs get wrong. Every chief executive is a visionary. You have to be in a business owner. You have to be a visionary. You have to look down the road. You have to do budget forecasting. Everybody does that. That doesn't mean I give up my primary duties of leading in the moment today because I'm a visionary. That's not how
Yeah.
leadership works. So, and I've met to a lot of police chiefs who just they don't lead on a day by day basis. They delegate leadership and they focus on the big sexy stuff because that's what they think they should do. Somebody told them that's what they should do.
Mm.
That's what elected officials want them to do. Whatever. They don't have an understanding of what really needs to be done. And what really needs to be done is you spend every day with your people. You pour into them, always tell them the truth, right or wrong, whether they want to hear it or not. And you be a support element for them to help them get to the next level they want to get to. It's mental health training or emotional health training or decompression. We do that once a month. Like we had things to do here, but we don't have any of that stuff, Jessica. Like those girls are still dealing with all the overdose and the dead kids and all that. That's still happening. Domestic violence.
Yeah.
Watching a woman being beaten over a period of time for me was hard. Was hard.
Yeah.
As a protector, as a helper, I could arrest the guy, and I did, but you're not fixing that marriage. You're not fixing the trauma there. And you
You
go back
can't
and you
fix
deal with it.
everything.
No,
You
and you're
can't.
there again, and you're
Yeah.
watching this woman, and you're pleading with her. I'll give you resources. I'll help you. I know you're in a tough spot. I know you have kids because
Mhm.
I can't imagine doing this to my wife or somebody doing this. That's not a way to live a life.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anyone to really talk about that with, like we didn't really talk about that stuff in the police department. I would talk about it at home with my wife and stuff, but imagine if we could come back and, hey, let's really dive deep and not joke and not make fun of people. Let's dive deep in what we just dealt with. And as men, we don't want to talk about this. We put up this wall That's where a good leader comes in. That's where a great leader comes in and knocks that freaking wall down, knocks the wall down. So that's what we need, leaders
Yeah.
who are willing to knock the wall down so their officers can come back and deal with all that stuff and kind of pour it out and dump it out and heal.
Yeah, like I feel like everything you're saying right there just comes back down to a single word, and that word is trust. Building that trust, and if you have a chief who says like, look, I might not be able to tell you the reason why I'm doing something, right? But trust me, meaning trust me because you know that I have your best interest at heart, or the best interest of the police department and our community that we serve at heart, right? And so I think that type of leadership, even though it's a little more vulnerable, right? It takes a little bit more maturity. It takes that flexibility to adapt to different contexts. But I think ultimately it's going to make the leader's life easier, because if your people trust you, that means if some bad shit goes down, they're going to come to you and they're going to be like, hey, I got to tell you something that happened, and you can deal with that before it gets a lot worse, right? Or
Yeah.
people are more likely to listen to you and, and do what you ask them to do if they trust you. And I mean, I think that's so important. I'm just also,
And you said trust is like, how many of us have been burned by people that say, hey, Jessica, trust me on this, trust me. And they
yeah,
totally burned you. So I understand why
yeah.
people are like, trust you. You have to earn my trust. I get
You
all
got to
that.
earn it. Yeah, totally. You
Yeah.
got to earn it.
But if you have people around you that you've earned their trust, or they have earned yours, those are special relationships. So,
Yeah.
you gotta double down and really invest in them, because trusting relationships are hard to find. When you got them, keep them close. Keep them
Treat
close.
them like gold. And look, just as a side note, I just want to say, like, the fact that you've been really like trusting and people have screwed you over. I mean, that's happened to me too. People have been like super kind to, and they just like stab me in the back. And I always feel like afterwards, I feel like I'm mad at myself instead of being mad at the person, because I'm like,
Exactly.
how could I be so stupid not to know? But I'm like, wait a second, you did something. Maybe it was naive, but it was kind, and this person's a jerk. So I just
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
like, yeah, I think it is important to have a balance, right? And to be able like to suss out somebody who really is intending you harm, but you don't want to go the opposite extreme where you just stop trusting everybody, because that would be a shame too. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Being
screw those
cynical.
people.
Yeah, exactly. Being cynical is not, that is the not the way, I think. Like, you're right about
Yeah.
that. Being cynical,
Yeah.
because you're never going to be able to really help people if you have a cynical mind. And my dad's a therapist, and he's been through a lot of stuff, and he said it best to me years ago.
Yeah.
He says, son, you love people, and you're going into the world intending to interact with many different types of people. People are messed up.
Yeah.
So be prepared, as you love
Yeah.
to do this and interact with people. You're going to meet amazing people, and you're going to meet broken people. Broken people do broken things. Don't take it personally. I was a people pleaser and never want to offend anybody. And,
Yeah.
and that's the way I was raised. So you have to learn. You get into the world that people are people, and don't take it personally.
Yeah. And look, also talking about LinkedIn and talking about Israel, it's like if you have a strong opinion about something, anything, there's always going to be somebody who will try to counter that or be mad about it, and you have to just accept that. And you
Yeah,
don't want to
and
be a person who doesn't have strong opinions about the things that you care about.
or you have them like privately, and you're like really knowledgeable, or you have all these great opinions, but you're afraid to share them with people. You're afraid to be challenged or ridiculed,
Right.
even though you might have great ideas. I think how many people are like that, and they get on social media, they probably have all these amazing ideas, and they see other people who's courageous to share their ideas, but they can't get there, and that creates a level of frustration. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you said something. Oh, here's what I'm going to say to you.
Yeah.
Just a little before we go, a little affirmation for you.
Yeah.
You talked about heavy stuff today, too, like October 7th and all this stuff. And it's people like you that really just inspire the hell out of me, because you can laugh and have a good time and smile and be genuine in the moment. And it doesn't take away the fact that there's pain in your heart, and there's pain in the world, and there's pains that really keep you up at night.
Mm-hmm.
You can navigate both and show up in the world in a way that's a light. And a lot of people aren't able to do that. So thank
That's
you for
very
that, because
nice.
that light, then what happens is, I think that light for others who are going through painful moments sees Jessica in this interview talk about October 7th. Oh my God, they talked about October 7th. Chad asked her about October 7th, and she was comfortable talking about, like, a lot of people aren't comfortable about it. Yeah, we can talk about it, and it's really painful, really painful. And I can listen to you, you can listen to me, and we can also laugh and joke and realize life continues to move on. Because if we live in the pain every single day, we're never going to have a life of significance. So, not ignore the pain, smile and realize that we're the pain. We have the ability to solve a lot of this pain. So, smile more, be positive, come together, and you're a great light for that. So, thank you.
That's so kind of you. Thank you, Chad. I really appreciate it. And I just want to, leave you with the blessing that you should just be a lifelong learner and that like the lessons you take in just go like deep, and that you just become like every year that you can look back on your life and be like, wow, look how far I've come, like every single year of your life. So I just hope you keep having that wonderful growth experience and then sharing it with others and just
Thank
keep
you.
up the good work.